I'm still experimenting. That last class where I did like I'll talk through it, no questions, and then walk around and help people, we can continue to try and work on that. Because then it might be a little more straightforward and more concise. It's natural. I mean, it's class. All right. I'm just going to jump around and try and answer some of these questions that popped up. There's probably not, there isn't a lot of time. It's, I should probably actually run my timer here. And let's see, we got 30 minutes divided by 9 people. Woof. That's 3 minutes per person. I'll try, I mean, I wrote all these down. I'll try and get through all of these. Again, I'm happy to hang out after class if you have individual questions. So starting with Max, he talked about, and you all talked about this like an arc jumping to a circle. So if I look at specifically Max's model here, I can see where that issue is happening. It's all going to happen within here. It's like that, right? That's exactly what you're talking about. So now I will say kudos to you for being like very, I'm assuming accurate to the image. I'm not going to pull it up, but I'm assuming that's why these are all the way they are. It's okay to like cut some corners, especially for this project, but maybe that's a cop-out because I want you all to be as accurate as possible. But do you see how I'm like, I don't know, making lines that are tangent to the sketches can kind of constrain them? These are the centers that I was talking about here. So that's other ways to constrain it. I think this came up in our discussion thanks to Anastasia's sketch, but I think this would be my preferred method, is making these tangent and defining this as like an angle to probably the bounding box is maybe what I would do. And hopefully that would then be fixed. Now again, if this is tangent to this, you might have to do a couple more. One may not be enough. Another way to like define an arc beyond just doing the radius, and of course SolidWorks is not being my friend right now, is going from vertice to vertice, and then having this to here. And then if this has, hopefully this, no, it didn't. I mean, this is a very, what's the word? It's somewhat convoluted. There's a lot going on here. It will happen sometimes. So if you give these two a perpendicular relationship and then define this and this, obviously these should be for construction. This is another solution on how to define an arc with a different way. It's overdefined now because of this guy right here. Everyone understands the overdefined error, right? No. Okay. Overdefinition happens. Right now, this arc is defined essentially. I mean, it's blue because it's attached to other blue things, but this curve is now kind of constrained. No matter how I drag this, that arc is not going to change. Can everyone see that? How that arc that I have defined is staying exactly what it is? Because it is, the length of it is defined and the height is defined, and it's just finding the smoothest path through those 3 points. Does that make sense, everybody? Yeah.
Is that way of defining it a lot more solid than
Yes, it is. Clearly takes a little more time, but this is more robust than defining the radius.
So this is overdefined, or?
No, so right now this is defined just fine. If I add the arc, now it's overdefined. Because the radius, so now it's like overdefinition happens when there are too many things telling it what to do. So I mean, the most simple example I can give you of overdefining something is like, here's a line that's horizontal. If I now tell it to also be vertical, that's overdefined. The line is saying, hey, you're telling me to be horizontal and vertical. I can't be both. I have to be one or the other. So like another way to make that example is if I have, here's a box. If I define the width of this line, I mean, this already has a relationship of like, this line is equal to this one. If I try and define this line, it's going to give me an error. It's overdefined because it already knows the width based on this line. Does that make sense to everybody? So anytime you have something overdefined, I think it's green. If there's an unsolvable error, it's red, like this one. It just can't solve it. This one is a relationship one. You can click on the relationship and hit delete to get rid of that. Or if it's a bigger sketch, you can delete the line. So this is a pretty complicated example. Again, I might like use lines tangent to it to help define it. But by defining the width and the height of the arc, sometimes that gets you around problems.
And the height.
Yeah,
So vertices to vertices and midpoint.
yeah, and midpoint. But it's critical that this has a perpendicular relationship to this.
Right.
Matthew, what's your question?
Tangents could stay right on, right? Because if you want to like stretch out your object, it's not going to stretch with it, right? Those two just stay the same.
Not in this instance. Right now, it would stay the same. It would not stretch with the objects. So, I mean, if you want to jump, so like for example, you could have something that looks like, so we could set all of this to be like equal in length to each other. I could then have an arc that goes like this, an arc that goes like this, an arc that goes like this. Actually, for what it's worth, you can set arcs to also be equal to each other so that they have the same radius. But if we're using this example, so if I make all of these, here's like one way to control it. Make all of these tangent to each other. Nope, I have 3 selected. That doesn't work. You have to select. Oops, shit, my bad. Wait, say that again? Yeah. That is a good question. I don't know the answer. My best guess is equal refers to the radius, curve length refers to the circumference, is my guess. I would have to Google that. No, because if this and this have the same radius, this is a shorter chord than this is. That's my best guess at that thing. I'd have to Google it. So I just, based on Matthew's question and looking at what Max has, and it seems like we all struggled a bit with arcs blowing up. Here's a way that now they should all still have, so okay, so all of these lines are all equal, all of these lines are equal, and these are all tangent to each other. So now in theory, if I change this height, let's see what happens. I'll change it to a value of 1 inch, so like almost half of what this is. They all stay constrained with each other. Does that make sense? And now if I define one of these, I don't think that's going to be over-defined, but now let's like bump this up to 3 and see what happens. So this is maybe now where this is over-defined. It works at 1, but now let's try this at 3. This is where it might make more sense to define one of the heights as opposed to everything else. So like this might be how I would have approached. It would be slightly less accurate than what you did, Max, but this like 1, 2, 3, this like double bump, it bumps out twice and in twice. I might have done something like this with one more bump in. And obviously it's a little, this is simplified because this is the vertical, but if this wasn't defined as a vertical, you could define this angle that it happens on. Does that make sense? Off to the bounding box. So I spent a bit more time on this one, but it seems like you all had this question on curves. So like, I don't know. This is sort of my workaround solution is I do this sometimes, like to define an arc. This is not uncommon. Again, it takes a little bit more, but it's a little bit more robust than defining the radius. Okay, I'm going to jump on to Hannah's here. No, I want to give you props. I like how you did the ridge here. I would have just made this extrude just go a little bit higher to give it a bit of a bump out.
It was just difficult redefining
Sure.
the heights and stuff, and it kept snapping back to a certain location, which was interesting.
Okay. That's snapping back how? Like to the object itself?
I don't know.
That's like, the note I have for you is resizing the master sketch.
Yeah. I think my master and the other things I'm confused on what you touch and what you don't touch, I think is my issue.
So I would have had, so firstly, it's a little bit weird that you have the bottle going to the left and the cap going to the right.
Because that was added
Later. I got you.
And I didn't know
I understand.
at the time, but
Okay.
now I do, so that's good.
Yeah, sometimes you do just have to rebuild that. I would have had this origin located here. I think that would have made your life a little bit easier.
Okay.
So in terms of like what to touch, what not to touch, if you have this located here, and you have like it looks like you have the bottle and the cap. So like this base of the bottle is I guess it's going to the origin. You kind of want to separate that. That's why it makes sense to put the origin at the bottom of the cap and the bottle. The origin at the bottom of the cap and the bottle going then down from the origin. That way you kind of separate the two entities. And that way you can only like mess with the bottle or only mess with the cap. I don't know if that's something like this. I probably wouldn't have put into the bottle and maybe done as a fillet later.
Yeah, now that you've said that, it's.
And just like things like this, like making sure these are tangent, like I can kind of see that there's a point here. So just try and, I know it takes a little bit more to like get all these set up, but I think this is also why this shoulder ended up being bigger than it needed to be. Yeah. I guess, what was your question on resizing the master sketch? Oh, just like literally in terms of like how to go about it in terms of what goes wide, what doesn't.
I think you would kind of hit it on the head where it's like you have to look at the object itself and
Split it.
decide what you, if you go width wise or height wise.
What you change.
Or
Okay.
you change both, I don't know.
For what it's worth, though, you have the major stuff, which is good, and I'm assuming these are going to the origin, so hopefully that's the case. Again, I think my main feedback is I'd move the origin. Okay. Again, happy to take more time after class. Alec, remind me, what was your specific question again? My note was to try the save as PDF thing. It might have just been a bug, and obviously I don't have your drawing file. Did you want me to look at a specific bottle of yours? Okay. Let's look at this real quick then, this bug that popped up. I'll create a drawing and try and stick on time now. All right, so I'm going to drop this in here. We're going to set this to full scale. Okay, this sheet is giant. I should have edited this. We're just going to go ahead, save as PDF. Now, I'm assuming like whatever you had was maybe specific to your computer. Obviously, I started a new file. Maybe a better example is to see if, so I don't know, like total cop out, but let's say Max was helping you save it. Having Max open it on his computer and try and save it out. Who knows? Maybe that would work. I don't deny that SolidWorks has bugs, and I take your word for it that it was a problem. I think your workaround solution that you described of like bringing it into InDesign or Illustrator and setting a bounding box in Illustrator and scaling it, pain in the ass, but better than nothing. I have for sure had issues before where like I'm trying to bring something into Illustrator full scale, and for whatever reason it just wouldn't do it from SolidWorks. It coming in as double scale. I ended up having to manually resize it. Terrible answer, but that example is a way to say that sometimes SolidWorks does stuff that you can't explain, and you just have to find a workaround solution to it. I'm sorry, there's not a better example for you. One last thing is if I go File, Save as JPEG. I don't know if you tried that. It should still be full scale. Is this now prompting me to save it as something else? Oh, I'm in Acrobat. That's why. Thank you. All right, class is over. There you go. It's model 11. All right. Doesn't want to jump to it. There we go. Yeah, sometimes SolidWorks doesn't want to like load an unsaved window. Okay, I'm just gonna move on. Saving it as, it's not showing it here to me because it's not saved. Saving it as a JPEG should still maintain. You can also print directly from here. That's another workaround. Save as JPEG should still maintain full scale. I guess there's no way for yeah. I think if you go to options and check in here, there should be an option that, like print capture. Yeah, it shouldn't change the scale. Okay. Next up, we have Belinda and the translation of, was it, you had the same question, how does it translate that arc was popping? Did that explanation for Max's bottle make sense? I'm assuming for you it happened, did it happen down here? Oh, it's the Gatorade bottle. I'm happy to open that. Which number is it? Second one.
I feel like how fast Noah is when he is bringing back PTSD moments from this freaking.
The franticness of.
Yeah, like, can I get this done this weekend? I thought 3 days was too long.
So like here, yeah, this is definitely an instance. So like looking at what you have set up here, you could have approached it as like, you could define one big arc like this. Here's another way that this could be done. So hopefully you all understand that it's okay in a master sketch to have it set up like this too. It doesn't have to be a straight profile. And now, well, because then what you would do when you would copy it, you would trim it. So you could, for example, if all of these, I see these are all slightly different, but let's assume they're all the same. You could, again, it's all setting up relationships to other entities. So let's say these are all equal. If you wanted them all to be like set in the same amount, let's see, I need to think about this a little bit more carefully. But you could do it with construction lines of like, either you could set up a bunch of lines that are equal to each other along the sketch. So this is what something that Max had mentioned. I mean, it starts to get pretty convoluted, but in terms of trying to make it so it rebuilds, you could have lines that intersect both the circle and the arc and set all of these lines, like set these to be equal to each other. Not quite yet. Okay, I definitely don't have enough stuff to find right now. Have a line. You could have that. I mean, yeah, here, that's a good point. We could, if you, actually, there's multiple ways. You could have this offset in a certain direction, and here you go, this makes sense. And then you could have all of the center points on this coincident on it, and that will prevent it from jumping. I was starting to construct lines and set up lines in such a way that it spaces all of these equally. I think what you were saying, Max, you were saying defining it this way with a line going like that. So I'll do that down here. That's also an acceptable solution. If you go this route, I would also have a line coming here. This is what construction lines are used for. So like this is perpendicular. You would then set this to be tangent. I realize again that this is pretty convoluted, but if you set this up for each circle and set all of these lengths to be equal and define one of them, you define it. I think this offset is the way that I would prefer to do it. Does everyone understand that? Is this offset a new command? So if you select an arc, you can click on this offset command. It asks you how far you want it to offset. You can reverse the offset, which is what I did, and then I put all of the centers of the circle. So actually, this is now a bit confusing. Really, this is the one that's for construction. This is what you want. And now when you copy this over, you would then use the trim tool. So I'm just going to roll this back. If I create a new sketch on the front plane now, I'll just copy these two for an example. You can just quickly hit T and just trim these out. And sometimes leaving the full circle keeps it a little more constrained. Does that make sense? Yeah, I know I'm flying through these. Again, if anyone wants to stay, I'm happy to answer individual questions after. Okay, moving on. Next I have Matthew in ridges and replace entities. So does this kind of applies to you, what I just explained, in terms of like patterning like cut-ins to a bottle? Did that make sense to you, what I just showed? What I will show you though is um, replace entities. So if we look at this, yeah, same thing with what I just shown. You could define these the same way. It doesn't look like this is tangent to me. So just try and catch things like that help. Here it looks like you have two arcs when one might do. Like you don't have to be, again, I applaud the accuracy, but whenever you can simplify, that's not a bad thing necessarily. But let's say you need to do this much definition again. I think that like defining the width and the height of the arc is maybe the way to go. Or again, sometimes like defining them in terms of tangencies to like parallel lines and having like an arc in between it. So like, and then having this tangent and then defining like this gap. This is another way to approach this. So I don't know, I'm hoping that all these different ways to approach it at least gives you different tools to try next time. And again, here you could have offset this and put circles on it to get those grooves that in the same way that I just showed on Belinda's bottle. Sometimes when you offset, it selects the whole chain. But now as this moves, the offset will move with it. And if you put circles on there, it'll keep the groove the same. The one feature I want to show is replace entities. So let's say you want to go back in here and change this arc to be a straight line. You can draw a line within here. I don't think, you know what, it may not be in here by default. So I think we have to go to Tools, Customize, Commands, Sketch, and it looks like, oh please, there you go, this one. It looks like a curve into a line. So again, if I click on this, it says, hey, replace which entity? Replace this entity with this one. And it asks you, do you want to delete it or make it a construction line? So if you want to keep the old one, you can make a construction line to leave it there, or you can delete it out. If you click check, now when the tree rebuilds, I added other stuff and I dragged it around. If I go here and edit this one, so you can see it's highlighting the one that's wrong. Oh, okay, that should have worked. I guess not. Let's see if this works for us. It didn't. I don't know. Okay, I'm surprised that didn't work. Typically, replace entities is pretty robust. I guess there's no fillets there for it to get lost on. Yeah, sometimes, again, sometimes you have to manually replace stuff, but try and replace entities first. It should work. All right. Max, this, and for everyone, the reason that this groove happened is, so you have this fillet in here. When you patterned it, they intersected with each other. So I'm going to guess that, like, if I do a quick fix here, is this cool? It's in the master. If I made this just a little bit more narrow, so I would definitely have this centered, right? So that I can drag one thing and it moves the other one. So I'm going to set this to vertical for construction. If I just drag this in a bit, and this should also be on center. Okay. What's the question? How to?
No, you just, that's very easy. I mean, good things to learn.
What, that you can drag things or set them to center?
Set them to center and then drag them to equal. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Cool. Glad that helps. Okay, I guess this blew up. Basically, I was trying to make it smaller. What was happening is it was too big and it was hitting each other, and the fillet was like coming up and around on the inside. Making it more narrow would have solved that problem for you. is the answer there. I realize we're cutting this close now. Just so everyone can understand what Nina said, she was dragging this bar up to suppress that. I see that it's in here. I just wanted to show you all that you can right click on this and say suppress. It's like a light switch that turns it off, and you can, it's still in there. You can right click and turn it back on. That's a, hiding is is visual. This actually like, it's a switch on the command that turns it off. And then I had put a note for cut ridge, and I don't know what that means anymore for you, Nina. Oh, on the bottom. So here's what I would do. I'm just gonna, again, this is gonna be a hack job. I'm sorry that we're like running out of time here. I'm sure you all just want to go. I don't blame you. This is how I would have approached that ridge. So I did a cut through the center, and then now I would just pattern this. So I would go here, circular pattern. It's asking me what to pattern around. Oh, selecting a face as opposed to a line. I tend to pick a line. There's multiple. That's not wrong. There's multiple paths to the same end result. I'll be honest, I didn't know you could do that, but if it worked for you. Yeah, bump instead of a cutout. Let's look at that real quick.
It's basically the same thing.
You could do an extrusion. You could do like. Yeah, you could do a slot shape here. Extrude. This is where, I think Max was asking me this. This is where you can do like a. Actually, here I might do. Pick a vertex. I'm just going to offset this. You want to move it. So I'm using offset here to tell this where to start from a different location. That's one way to do it. Or for some reason I'm struggling right now. I guess not for some reason. I'm struggling right now. Here you can say vertex, and you can select like the base here. And here you could have it go like, so now the extrusion is starting from this point, which is connected to the master sketch now. And you could have this go up like 0.3, and you could have it go down like 0.05. And so now you have like a little foot on there. Does that make sense? When you do the extrusion, if you want to make it get combined, you want to make sure that this box is checked, merge result. Does that make sense? Yep. Right. So now to finish this, I could fillet it. We could fish fillet this. Has anyone had the Popeyes chicken sandwich? I haven't. I think it's all marketing. I think they just purposely limited.
You know how you talked about the balls that went from square to oval because their competitors went from square to oval?
Say that again. Who did that?
You designed that model that went from like square to oval, so it had a bigger foot.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I feel like one guy came out with a chicken sandwich, and the other guy was like, "No, we have to do a chicken sandwich."
Right. Okay, this looks very brutal, but does that explain roughly what you would do? You would play with the dimension. Okay. I realize class is almost over. Real quick, so looking at this, same thing. It's all these arcs. That 3-point thing I think would have helped you better. So like I would have done it. I would have put it here and have this be horizontal in this instance, and then define what this depth is. And now when you change this, that arc should maintain. Let's just change this to 2 inches. And then that arc stays the same. Sorry that I didn't show you that sooner. The hope was that the midpoint check-in would have caught some of this stuff. The I think the miscommunication for me to you all is that I don't think you fully anticipated the amount of changes you would need to make to your sketch and how robust it needed to be. Um, the goal is to learn. Hopefully, at least this is educational at this point. I will take some level of that into consideration as I grade, but don't. Now it's not recorded. So. To what level of consideration, I don't know yet, but I will keep that in mind. Okay. Okay, it's basically time. I will show you your baby bottle if anyone wants to stay for that. But please, does everyone have the printouts here? Cool. And this has all of the screen grabs as well. Okay. Again, if anyone has any individual questions, I'm happy to stay and answer. I will keep this recording going as I show Anastasia. Do you have like 5 minutes to stay while I explain more stuff to you?
Oh yeah.
You're welcome to leave. I'm not going to keep you, but I have it open. I'll look at it. So yeah, there's no homework for Wednesday. Wednesday's going to be a pretty beefy class. Most of the classes are beefy. SolidWorks is a heavy program. I'm recording it. I'll keep the recording going just so like I want to answer some of your questions. So you were asking about patterning this, right? This cut here.
No, should we go like because there are a few things with this one. It's just first, where should I make like when I want to make the cuts in a certain sketch? Like, is it a separate sketch? I should make a.
Oh yeah, that's a good question.
So, like, this was,
Let me explain that to you. I'm just reminded of this now. Hey Max, you're on Wednesday for show and tell, right? Okay, cool. Yes. Okay, where to put sketches? This is a very good question. While it's best to put in the master, it's not necessary. So let me show you what I mean by that. So if we show the master sketch here, we can see it's gray. So I'm currently in your sketch here where you put these circles. I can put in 2 lines here and set these to be equal to each other. And for construction, these are already equal, that's good. If I now dimension from the base here to here, I think what's confusing is this dimension is going to the master sketch. Do you see that? It is possible to define to the master sketch from another sketch. So now, let's just say we also want this to be consistent. Let's say we want that to stay at 9.8. Oh wait, why I did that? Okay. Okay, I don't know why this did that. Let's figure it out. I'm assuming it's because this is coincident on this point, maybe. Yeah. Yeah. So this might have been unintentional, but this coincident line here, it's on this edge line. So you don't want that there. You want to go ahead and delete that. Sometimes that happens as you're clicking. When you drew the circle, chances are you hovered over this and it snapped to it. A good trick is to hold control, and it won't snap to anything if you hold control down. So that's a good one to know. So now if I define this, now it's not overdefined. So sometimes that's how you get an overdefined error, is sometimes it's snapped to something and you're not aware it's snapped to it. So that's one instance where that happens. Now if we exit this and change this master, let's see that circle should rebuild with us. So let's hit 7 here. Oh, you know what? Here's the other error though, is you want to define this to this so that it moves with it. So now if I move this, we should see that those circles jump with us. So let's go to 7 inches, checkbox that, exit out. So it moved this here, but do you see how the circles move with it? Does that answer your question? So the most direct way I can answer the question is where to put a sketch. Sometimes it happens that you think of something after you created the master. In my opinion, best practice would be to go back, edit the master, put it in, because then it's easier to find. However, it's acceptable to put it in another sketch and point to the master, and it'll still be robust.
Yeah, I also have like an issue how to select certain like on your cell to go like to make everything,
Yep.
the bottle and the silicone sleeve.
Yep.
That's why I put it on separate. So I like hided my bottle because I didn't know what to.
I understand. Here, I think I can show you that. What was this at? This was at 6.16, I think is what it was at.
Yeah, and then yeah, but this something everything's just jumping around like.
So you're talking about, I think you did this right. I checked it because I remembered your question. If I go here and go edit, the solution is here as feature scope.
I don't think I did it right. How did you? Because I cannot roll or make pattern.
You can't pattern? Let's try.
I think it's because it intersects or something. And it's,
Oh, yeah. Yep. Okay, let's try it. I think I know what's going on, but let's try it first. Okay, so we want the direction to be this center line. We have the feature here. We obviously don't want it to go that many times. Let's say 5.
wait, why did you do it so easy? But did you move instructions to another?
Nope. Here, let me reopen your bottle and we'll do it. Yeah, 3.
I know.
Oh.
I like a little turned off.
Oh, sorry, I opened Belinda's bottle. Apologies. So we'll go to Anastasia. Is it Anastasia or Anastasia? Anastasia. Hey, hey, Anastasia.
It's like some disease. Some people do like
Anastasia. Anastasia. So I'm not pronouncing it wrong. Okay, cool. Yes. Okay. So here you have this. So this is the key here. Unfortunately, it's kind of blocked by my pop-up. But this here, where it says feature scope, selected bodies shell. So it's only cutting through the silicone. So here you could clear these selections and say, hey, I only want it to cut, not that one, only this one. For some reason, it's gray. It should be blue. Your colors might have changed there. So that's correct. So you can clear this and literally click on the body you want to cut, and then click that check mark. But you already had that, right? Here you want to go to circular pattern. Because the cut extrude was highlighted, so do you see I highlight it? If I now go to circular pattern, it asks the direction you rotate around. I select the center line in the master sketch. Now when I clicked on this initially, it was at like 31. Obviously, if you do too many, it may fail. But like if you set a nice number like 5, click check, it should do it. It wasn't doing it for you.
I have some other settings maybe.
Okay. Yeah, there's a chance it's another setting.
Those settings like not like really intuitive, so like I'm like, what does this mean?
Gotcha.
So I'm like,
So I think again, what's key is that it only hits that body. Now, for what it's worth, here's like a total workaround. This is. Sorry, go ahead. You have another
yeah,
question.
so like did I do it right? So like the whole master would be all of it together, and then I would just select certain parts because like
So
if I would like dimension everything better and stuff, is this how you do it?
yeah.
Or?
Short answer, yes. This is an acceptable master. There's enough information here. For me, I probably, yeah, that happened because I'm assuming this is not horizontal. Oh, it is horizontal. Is this horizontal? They're both horizontal. Where did that happen? Was it this bottle?
Yeah, I think when I like made it big, that's what my stuff happened.
We can look at it. So let's go to double. I mean, the thing is, it looks right. Your master sketch is right. These are horizontal. That was my assumption, is that you didn't have these. Oh, yeah. Look here. I click on this. Look at the definition. Distance and tangent.
Distance. What
So
does it mean, distance?
distance is this.
Oh.
You're missing horizontal is key. That's why it did that. So there's nothing telling the line to be like this. So if you change the height, it's just trying to stay tangent. The angle isn't fixed. So it then goes like this and it creates a point. Does that make sense?
It has nothing to do that those two points from different sketches on the same line?
No.
'Cause I thought they
Has
were
nothing to do with
together,
that.
and that's
No,
why they-
has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with the fact that, so do you see that? That's good. That's horizontal. This one is not. Although if they were jumping together to a point with this defined, I don't know how that was happening. That's weird. But again, this is exactly what it was when I opened it. If I click this, it's tangent and distant. You want that to be horizontal too. And that should have solved against that problem of it coming to a point.
And when you make like, because I was trying to do it on Tivana box, like this box bottle, this.
Let's look at it.
Like I was trying, okay, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go on top.
Oh, on the groove on the
And
bottom.
then, yeah, and then I couldn't move it to the bottom, and
Let's look at it. Which one was it? The first one. It's already open.
it's not there. Like it's not safe. Because
No,
I
it's
couldn't
okay.
figure out how to do it.
Let's exit out of here.
Thank you.
I'll change. Yeah, honestly, this is my shortest answer to this.
Do extra, like, different
So you want it to be bumped out, is what you want.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, let's look at it.
kind of what you showed me.
Honestly, so to me, this is also a cut. I know it's kind of hard to see, but for me, the way that I would do it, am I in Sketch World? I'm not in Sketch World. For me, I would do this as a cut. I would, yeah. Just that like to my eye, this looks like a groove in here. Yeah, and this is where I would just go through all because you just want it to cut through. And again, once again, take this cut and now circular pattern. Max was saying this works. I didn't know that. Okay.
Oh, it's like.
Yeah, you're just selecting a circle. I tend to select this line, the center line, and then just make this, I mean, it looks like there's a bunch really close to each other. I think that's the illusion it gives, is that it looks like it's protruding because there's a lot of little cuts. But if you really look carefully at it, it looks like a slot shape. And I think this is going to give you a cleaner look.
Oh, can you just fillet one and then?
Yep.
So
Yeah, had I gone here and clicked fillet and filleted this edge, it's kind of big, so we'll go like 0.05. That's probably still too big, but that's all right. And now if I select both of these, I should be able to go to circular pattern.
Because I think I did first like circle pattern, and then I was trying from here select what I want to pattern, and it didn't work.
Okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. Let's try. Yeah, you can do that too, though. Let's delete this out again. We can go here to circular pattern. So nothing selected. See, it's blue. It's saying, hey, what do you want to, what features you want to pattern? And I can click on these two. And then again, select the center instance. And that's another way to do it. Cool?
Yeah.
Good questions.
Nothing happens, when you try to. It's like, okay, I got it.
Yeah.
If I watch your videos, do the exact same thing.
I know.
And the thing doesn't happen.
When Max comes over and it's like, yeah, and just the exact same thing on you, and it still works.
And it works for him, not for you. You're a cooler. A SolidWorks cooler. Yeah.